Okay, welcome to the first of a series, the Business Crisis Toolkit. Really pleased to have Ian. Ian is from Moxie Bookkeeping and a big supporter of Sierra Commons. This course is brought to you by Sierra Commons with support from the Sierra Small Business Development Center. And it's really in response to all of this craziness going on and realizing that there's a lot of classes that are about tactical instruction, things to do, here's how you market, but there's not a lot about personal crisis that people are going through, emotional crisis. So we're trying to tie that all in together and create a class that is helpful practically and also heart-centered as well. So with that, Ian, thank you and take it away.
Thank you. Let me see if I can do a screen share here. Oh, you just have to allow me to screen share.
Okay. I am gonna make you the host.
Great. That makes it easy. Then I can share whatever I want. Let's see. Let's go for this screen right here. You got that?
We do, and I guess like I said, it doesn't allow me to make you co-host, so I just want to, if someone pops on, they're in the waiting room. So if you do see that, please let them in.
I will let them in. Yes. So well, I guess I should keep my eye out for that, shouldn't I? It should pop up. All right. So I put the little title in here, the Business Crisis Toolkit, and when is it time to pack it in, which is the topic for this evening. So what I'm hoping to do, and again, you know, as many questions as you have or want to ask, please feel free, is to try to give us some emotional distance from our businesses so that we can look at what the data is saying and compare that to what our heart is saying. Because sometimes things feel really terrible and they're not that bad, and sometimes they feel really terrible and they are that bad. So we'll see if we can find our way through. So this is me. My name is Ean Price Murphy. I am the owner and founder of Moxie Bookkeeping, which is actually based in Brooklyn, New York, although I am a Grass Valley resident. And unlike a lot of other business advisors, I actually did not escape from the corporate world. I've always been a small business. So I know the struggles and joys of owning a small business intimately. I have a staff, so I'm aware of HR issues. And most importantly, I think, than any of the kind of credentials that come with this is the story of how I got to be where I am, because I was not born a bookkeeper. In fact, in my 20s, when a lot of my friends were starting careers or starting businesses or starting families, I filed for bankruptcy. And it wasn't because I wasn't working hard. I often had 2 or more jobs at a time, and it wasn't that I was spending like crazy. I think at the time I filed bankruptcy, I was sharing a 4-bedroom flat with 7 people. But I lived in an urban center that was expensive, and my wages were not a livable wage. And at the core of all of that, I was financially illiterate. I had never been told or given the skills or the information about how to read those warning signs that were flashing danger so brightly for anyone that was trained to read them. And so I wasn't able to take the corrective action that I could have taken before the situation just got really bad, and it was going to take me the rest of my life to pay off this debt. And so I decided to opt for bankruptcy. And that felt like a huge failure, obviously, and so part of the deal that I made with myself at that time was that I was never going to go back into debt. I was never going to let it get that bad again. And thankfully I haven't. And a lot of that is because I then started on this path of lifelong learning around what does money mean? What does it do? You know, if we know it's a tool, how do we use that tool effectively? How can I begin to learn the road signs that say things like, you know, Animal Crossing or boulders dropping, because it's really as simple as that. You know, seeing the sign doesn't predict the future. It just says, be careful, right? So that's sort of how I think of things now. And I often talk about the analogy of becoming comfortable with financial stuff, becoming comfortable with the money stuff as learning to drive a car. And that when I first learned how to drive a car, you know, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but you look at the dashboard with the buttons and the levers and the pedals and all of that. I learned on a stick. And I just felt like I'm going to push the wrong thing and kill everybody. Like everybody in the car, everybody outside of the car, like I'm in this giant metal death machine. And yet very quickly with practice and with guidance, you know, within a couple of months, I'm flying down the highway with the radio cranked up and the window down and singing at the top of my lungs. And I firmly believe that even if you don't think of yourself as a numbers person, even if that's not your zone of genius, you know, driving is definitely not my zone of genius, but I can handle myself in a car, right? I can drive safely and smartly and get to where I need to go. That's what I'm going for. So I don't want to hear any objections of that you're not good with number, because it's just a skill, and it's a skill that you can learn. So I want to start by sharing a slide of what I call the survival trap. And that I think that this is really common in most small businesses, which is we find ourselves in crisis, where that little A bubble is. And all we know is that we want out. And any direction is out. So any direction feels better than staying in the bad, uncomfortable, yucky place. But if you notice, of the arrows that are coming off and radiating from the A, only one of them is actually going towards the solution, which is B, or the direction that we want to go. And so what usually happens is that business owners head off in a bunch of different directions on a gut feeling or an instinct, or an opportunity arises or a crisis presents itself. And so they move away from the crisis point, but are not necessarily being strategic about it to move towards an actual sustainable solution. And so I just want to acknowledge that we're all probably pretty firmly sitting in the A bucket. And yet the more that you can just be comfortable with being uncomfortable and take, you know, clear, informed, decisive action towards your goal, and we'll look at some strategies on how to do that in a couple of slides, the more likely you are to be able to get there. So here we have a little swoosh called the Business Crisis Trend. And this is essentially just sort of the scoop of what happens when people are in crisis. And this is not just business crisis, although it's in a business context here, but really for any upsetting, traumatic, major life event that is negative. You know, we all start in the freeze response, right? That's that deer in the headlights, what just happened, and our ability to take effective action is dependent on our ability to break through that freeze response as early and as quickly as possible to take informed action, right? And a total side note for this is I actually used to teach self-defense as well. And this was exactly the same thing that we were learning in self-defense. You know, is we all talk about fight or flight, but first you have to break through the freeze. And so that's what that first stage is that startle, that freeze up. And, you know, I think pretty universally across almost every discipline that I know, the best way to break through that freeze response is to breathe. It's as simple as that. And so just by taking a deep breath when you're feeling overwhelmed in crisis, etc., that can do you some really amazing favors to allow you to take the best next right action. And I'm a huge fan of next right action because it's bite-sized. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the worst thing you can do, that straight down line, says inaction. So if you stay in shock and stay in freeze, you are not able to move towards that B or even to move out of that yucky A. So, you know, again, the natural neurological response is to slide into desperation. That's almost always what happens next. And so from there, if we're feeling panicked, overwhelmed, desperate, then the next line that goes straight down is the big wrong action. And that's any of those other arrows pointing away from A that don't point towards where we actually want to be moving towards. So yes, you took a decisive action, and that's amazing and good and helpful. But if it's not considered, if it's not strategic, if it's not supported in some way, it may be something that actually makes a new problem, maybe even a worse problem. And so I'm always trying to kind of get people, again, to sort of move through that as quickly as possible into this stage 3 of evaluation. And that is what that deep breath does, is it lets you just ground yourself and center yourself and say, what's really happening right now? So if we use the example of the Jones fire, you know, there is a fire. It is a legitimate, true emergency. You don't necessarily want to just freeze and stay put, nor do you necessarily want to get in your car and just start driving, because you might be driving into the fire rather than away from it. So you want to evaluate, where is it? How far away is it? You know, what are the sources of information that I have access to telling me about size, direction, intensity, so that I can say, given this information, here's my plan. And that moves us directly into stage 4, which is the deliberate action. And so that allows us to say, I need to evacuate immediately. Let me grab my go kit, or I need to be aware that I'm in significant danger and decide, do I want to just preemptively move myself out of this zone, or would I rather, you know, take the time that I want in order to gather the things that I need so that I can leave at a moment's notice. So we have that little deviation there of small wrong recurrent actions, which are not as dramatic as a big wrong action, but small wrong recurring actions, again, could be just sort of like turning in circles. So you're moving away, but then back, but then away again. And it's just sort of a nonsensical pattern. And that might look like something like packing all the wrong things as you're getting your go bag ready, you know, packing things that are not essential or heavy or replaceable. So you feel better because you're taking action, but unless it's a deliberate action, it's not going to move you to where you want to go. It's not going to get you to that point B. And the point B, if you feel yourself starting to go there, you will almost always get some momentum, get some clarity, get some support. One of the things that I really love about deciding on a clear path of action is it very clearly defines all of the things I don't have to do, all the things I don't need to worry about, because they are not the most important core action to take right now. So again, if I'm trying to grab things in my go bag, I definitely want to remember my asthma inhaler, but I don't necessarily need to bring, you know, my expensive face cream with me. Maybe I do. I don't know. That's up to you. But just it lets me be very focused on, what do I need to take with me in this crisis to be prepared for the next short period of time, so that I can get that surge, that burst, and continue to make good use of the opportunities that they present themselves, so that my business can continue, so that I can live to fight another day. And I actually screenshotted a very cute quote right before this that I forgot to post. Let me see if I can grab it right. Yeah. It says, when something feels heavy, break it down until one piece of it is light enough to handle. Begin there. And that's a quote by a guy named Bernie S. Siegel, which I just happened to come across right before this. I was like, ooh, get that for the thing.
Ian, I love the fire, walking through the fire, and because I was, as you were saying some of that stuff, I wasn't thinking about my face cream, but I was thinking about, you know, some of those things you brought up.
Right.
And trying to, if someone is starting a new business because they have to, that's a response to a crisis. But let's say, for example, a restaurant where there's a fire and a health crisis and an economic crisis. And, so I'm, like the big wrong actions, it almost is like when there's so much stuff going on, is that just like hindsight, like, oh, I guess that was wrong? Like, it seems like things are so topsy-turvy. How do you know?
Well, if you have a specific desired outcome, because to me, a big wrong action is a big response without a clear direction, because we always have to test and verify, right? I think I'm heading north. Oh, whoops, turns out the road towards the east. Fine, I just need to course correct and get back to where I was going. So it's not big, you won't always know that it's a big wrong action in the moment, but you'll always know whether it was a wise risk or a wise choice to have taken. So again, a big wrong action might be running out of your house and jumping in your car and driving away and not bringing an extra pair of socks or the medication that you rely on, or your phone that you need, or, a family photo album. So it's not that you didn't take an action. It's just that action it was guaranteed not to get you the desired result. So it's just sort of the first impulse. We have an impulse to take a big action without thinking about, is this a strategic decision? And then the second place that we go to is taking lots of little actions to feel busy and feel productive, even though they're not necessarily at all pointed towards where we want to go.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Cool. So I like to do this thing that I call the positive process. I'm actually not the one that named this. Most of these slides come from Mike Michalowicz, who is the author of the book Profit First. And at the beginning of the COVID crisis, he actually, for our group, created some of these sheets that are all available at this little website up here, recessionresponse.com. So you can download all of those for free, and they've got his branding on the bottom. He's one of my mentors and coaches. So this is the positive process. And the idea is just to identify what the negative situation is. And in this case, we could say my business has no income. And it's not to put a positive spin on that, because there is no positive spin on that, but just to, again, break it down into manageable chunks. So my business has no income is the negative situation. Okay, well, what are the consequences of that? Well, the consequences are I can't pay my staff, can't pay my rent, can't pay myself. Those all suck. All of those options suck. But I want to be able to look at, are there any opportunities, or how can I press myself to find an opportunity in this situation? So, for a lot of office-based businesses, what they're realizing is, I actually don't need to pay my rent. Nobody's in the office. We're surviving okay in terms of our systems and processes. So maybe we never have to go back to the office. So maybe that's an opportunity to streamline, reduce the expenses I don't want, so that if and when my income comes back in, I'm running a much leaner, more efficient version of my business that still delivers the same quality output, because that's the important piece, right? Whatever we do, we cannot reduce the quality of our product, or we're doing everybody a disservice. So when I think about the opportunities, right, maybe I have an opportunity to finally get some of those operating manuals in place. Maybe I've finally got time to do a deep clean or something. I don't know what the opportunities are. Only you will know what your specific opportunities are. And step 3 is then to look at, well, what are ways to reduce the consequences, right? Well, if one of the consequences is I can't pay rent, and one of the opportunities is maybe I don't ever have to pay rent again, there you go. There's a way to reduce a consequence. If there's a way to, you know, say I can't pay my staff, and under normal circumstances, it would be heartbreaking, but much easier to say, I'm going to furlough people so that they can collect unemployment, and then I'll hopefully be able to bring them back on later. You know, I know that unemployment is a whole different beast right now because of the pandemic, and that's pulling away a lot of those resources that normally can help us as business owners feel better about laying staff off and letting them go, because we know that they have accesses as individuals to resources that we don't necessarily have access to as business owners. You know, the PPP helped some businesses, but you know, almost everybody that I know has used that money up by now. And so then of course the question is, what's next? So, and you know, ways to reduce the consequences, maybe, you know, maybe I invest in my partner's side hustle, or maybe we look at ways to reduce our personal financial footprint, or, you know, maybe I stop doing some of the normal things that I do in terms of setting money aside for a rainy day, because, you know, it's the weather's pretty crappy out there, right? It's not rain, unfortunately, but that's the idea. And so then we look at, okay, well, what are the ways that we can maximize those opportunities? How can we make the best of what we do still have? And a lot of this is rooted in the same idea of like showing appreciation for the things that you have, or having a gratitude process. You know, as bad as things can get, there is always something that you can find to be grateful for, no matter how small. And in fact, the smaller it is, sometimes the more impactful it is to be, you know, and I think we heard this on the news with the fire the other day, the family that lost their home. And she was like, I'm just so glad we're all alive. And that is truly a blessing. Houses can be rebuilt, money can be replaced, time and family cannot. So the last step then is to take those small steps. What is the next small step that I can do? And that means like not create a website, because that's not a small step, that's a big step. But it could be something like decide on a website platform, you know, choose Wix or choose Square or choose whatever, to just research. And I mean, maybe research is the small step that you can do. And then you also on the other side want to just do small steps to decrease the consequences, which could be calling vendors, negotiating, you know, longer terms, lower rates, whatever you can do, so that you're taking small right actions rather than small wrong actions. Yep, and I clicked away. So there we go. Whoop, did I just miss one? No, 10-10-10 method. So overwhelm is huge, and pretty much all of the, yeah.
Just interrupt.
Come on in.
Somehow I have this sneaky suspicion that you have these slides, but I'm still seeing the business crisis trend slide.
Are you seeing a new one now?
Nope.
Let's
Is it the
see if
share
I
screen
can
action?
pause my screen share. Pause and resume. So now you should be seeing the business crisis. That's the positive process. Is it there?
The business crisis trend. It was the first slide.
But you don't see positive process now?
No.
I didn't see that either. Only the business crisis trend.
There we go. Positive process.
No.
You found it? You found it? Okay, good.
It switched for a second, but I'm seeing.
So I think it was
I'm seeing you now.
I'm back. I turned my whole screen share off. I did a pause and then I restarted, hoping that that would do it. What if I'm going to share the whole, that should do it, right? You can see the top of the, yeah. So this is the positive process. And again, if you wanted to download them, you can download them at recessionresponse.com, which is Mike McAllowitz's site.
This is incredible.
Let's see if I can do it again. Do you see 10-10-10?
Nope.
maybe?
No.
No. Only the positive process.
Or did I freeze?
You froze. Okay, now you're unfrozen.
Oh,
10, 10, 10.
Oh, no, I see it. The 10, 10, 10.
beautiful. Okay. So you'll notice that the theme on all of these slides is, cut it down into that tiny little thing, which is why I loved that quote so much. So the 10, 10, 10 is, what is the consideration? So when you're trying to decide between, do I turn left or do I turn right? Think about, well, if I turned left, if I proceeded with turning left, what effect would I expect that to have in 10 minutes? And what effect would I expect that to have in 10 months? And what effect would I expect that to have in 10 years? Which obviously we can't know, but it's just about giving yourself the time and the space to really think it through all the way about, why am I doing this turning left thing? What am I assuming that it will eventually bring me to? And then I always like to consider on the other side, not what if I turn right, but what if I don't turn left? What is the consequence, the likely consequence in the next 10 minutes? What is the likely consequence in the next 10 months and the next 10 years? And honestly, the time is arbitrary. The whole idea is right now, pretty soon, kind of far from now, right? So don't get hung up on like, well, I don't know about 10 months. That doesn't make sense. Cross it off. Doesn't matter. Write in whatever you want. And then I would do the same process for, well, what if I turn right? What effect will that have? Now, soon, not so soon. And what if I don't turn right? And so just having that, hate to keep using the word data, but I'm a bookkeeper, so there you go. Just having that data in front of you can really help clarify, right? I mean, I remember as a kid, a lot of times we do the like pro cons T and write down all the pros on one side and the cons on the other. But that didn't, sometimes I'd end up with equal, right? Or sometimes I'd add in more on the column that I really wanted to do and could feel myself leaning towards, which is an important thing to take note of. But even that didn't have this idea of like, what's the eventual result that I'm hoping for here? And so that's why I like this particular sheet. Do you see confidence mapping? No, wait, did I go skip over one? It's so hard to tell. No.
Yeah, I did see confidence mapping.
Okay, good.
And while I'm unmuted, I'm going to throw in what I often ask myself and other people when I'm coaching them is, what do you have to lose when they're deciding, well, should I try this new thing? Or if I'm launching a business and going to sell, I'm going to pick a new product to sell. What do you have to lose? Sometimes it's a lot, and sometimes it's like, yeah, not a big deal at all.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important question. The interactions that I have with business owners tends to be around them overcomplicating systems. And so, if they're thinking about trying a risk, which that's not really the world that I live in, I think what you have to lose is a great question. If they're talking about, should I add this new product or service or complexity? I go, well, what if you just didn't? What if you just let whatever you had now work? If it's not working, that's a different question. So if you just didn't add this new thing, maybe what you'd see very clearly, very quickly is the current product offering is not what people want. And then you go, okay, great. So let's stop that and shift rather than just like loading up the wheelbarrow with every rock that we go, ooh, that one's pretty, that one's pretty. So the confidence mapping, again, I think in moments of crisis, our confidence, our faith in ourselves can really get shaken. Is this my fault? Certainly that was my experience when I was filing for bankruptcy, right? How did I mess this one up? Like, I'm only in my early 20s. How did I mess this one up? And it was really hard to feel like I was going to recover from that. And I wish I'd had this sheet, but here it is now. And so the idea is just to say, you know, a business is just a business. It's just a relationship that you have with the outside world. And relationships can be great, relationships can be terrible, or relationships can be just fine, but not right for you, or not right for you right now. So this is to sort of check in with yourself and, again, just get grounded in, where is an area that I feel really confident in now? And what did I do to get confident in it? Which is almost always practice and learn and get support. And then the really important question, how long did it take? Because when you think back, nothing that you're great at came without some time and some effort. And probably you're spending some time and effort on maintaining your skill in that area as well. So we just want to acknowledge you can do hard things. You've done hard things before. And now we're going to apply that same truth to an area where you don't have as much confidence. So I'm just going to make a big leap and say it might be finances, or it might be bookkeeping, or it might be money management. So if you have a lot of confidence in your ability to build a beautiful armoire, and what you've done to do that is you apprenticed and you learned and you worked in a shop and you tried a bunch of stuff on your own time, and it took, you know, a couple of good years in there to get really good at it, and you maintain it by practicing that skill by building things frequently, then like, cool, let's just do that with the money stuff. So you lack confidence in it, fine. What have you done so far? Have you kind of shied away from it, or refused to look at it or deal with it? Or have you stepped into that discomfort and gotten the support, the training, the education that you need for the specific problem that you're having? Did you give it enough time to really learn that skill? Back to driving a car, right? We didn't drive down the freeway on the first day. And then how have you maintained it? How are you going to continue practicing your money skills? You know, I love asking people to have money dates with themselves, where once a week you set a timer for as long as you can stand. Maybe it's only 15 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes. And you know, light a candle that smells good, or put on a softer light, put on your favorite music, and only do that task for as long as you can tolerate it before it becomes so big that you don't want to do it anymore. And if at the end of that 15, 30 minutes you're not done, fine, who cares? Stop. You'll have another money date the next week. So that can, again, just help make it feel more manageable and help maintain it, rather than waiting until the end of the year and being like, ugh, you know, my tax extension's about to run out and I'm in the last week of Labor Day and I don't want to do this now, and now I have this giant project. So that's that. Back to block control. You can see my little paste job down here. I wrote problem. It used to say forever. I don't like that. I don't like forever, because that's where you're supposed to think of the problem. It's actually at the bottom of the page, because we're going to elevate up from there. So what is the overwhelming problem that you're feeling? Again, my restaurant has been shut down. I don't have any good outdoor seating options for my location, and my income has dropped. Okay, what can I do about that in the next year? Well, in the next year, I could build a deck and create some outdoor space so that people can sit. That's lovely, but that's a big project. So what about this month? What can we do this month? Well, maybe this month we could streamline for takeout. Hopefully that doesn't take a whole month, but maybe I'll build a website. Maybe I've never had a website before. And so in the next month, I'm going to put my menu up online and make it possible for people to decide what to order, and maybe even order online, so that I can get my pickup and takeout business going again. Great. What can I do today or tomorrow? What can I get done in one day to help solve the problem of I don't have outdoor dining and I'm not making enough money? That might be a Facebook post. That might be an email blast. That might be, you know, putting out a coupon for something, or doing a 2-for-1, or maybe even doing a day of delivery to get people like, oh yeah, that place is great, we should order from them again. What can you do in 1 hour? In the next hour, what can, and what can you do right now? And again, just fill it in. It doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can do as many versions of this as you want, but it just helps break it down into smaller and smaller chunks of, again, you know, so maybe I decide that in 1 year I can have the deck done, and I already know that I can do the other stuff online because I'm already doing it. But maybe for now, what I want to do is call a contractor buddy of mine and have him come out and look at my location so that we could talk about, you know, I would really like to have an outdoor space because who knows when this is going away. And I think that would be a great thing to have. You have probably heard of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. This is the business version of that from a book called Fix This Next. And again, when business owners are trying to focus on all of the things at once, you know, our job is to be aware of everything, but to do only one thing. And so this sort of starts from the foundational level and builds up from there. So you have to have sales to have a business. You have to have income. And this is sort of the crucial point where when we're thinking about, is it time to pack it in or not? If you don't have sales and you don't have plans to get sales or increase your sales to a place where you can cover your obligations, then you are on a slow road or a fast road to bankruptcy. And it is my strong opinion that it is much better to grieve the loss of your business now without tapping into your personal resources. Like, please don't drain your retirement fund to keep your business alive for another year, because that's the exact opposite. Your business is supposed to be supporting you. You aren't supposed to be draining your life, your time, your energy, your money to keep this thing going. Businesses can always be rebuilt, might come back better. I forgot to include a slide that's called the 1 step back method, which is like, and this is partly because this has already happened in so many places like restaurants or even the toy shop downtown, right? What is the thing that we do? Well, we give people an enjoyable dining experience. Great. How do we do that? Well, you know, we make the food in the kitchen and then a guy brings it out and puts it on the table. Okay, well, if we can't do the put it on the table part anymore, what's 1 step back from that? Well, we actually could put it on the table just has to be outside. Great, problem solved. Okay, or, well, we, you know, put it on a container. And so if we put that in a to-go container, great, problem solved. And so you just start to like roll back, where can you begin to meet your people where they're at so that you can still deliver that quality and, more importantly, that experience that they get by using your product or interacting with your business, because that's what keeps that heart connection coming. So yeah, so it's got to start with sales. And I think this moves into the Q&A. It does. There's the fixthisnext.com. Oh, I have a thing on chapters there. You can ignore that. It's just the first 2 chapters of this book, Profit First, but it's a full 2 chapters, so that's a lot. So, but that's my website. And I just want to try and take another 2 minutes to tell a story of a friend of mine who had a cheese shop in Seattle. And that was her dream, right? She had decided, she'd studied about cheese. She was really into it. She opened this cute little cheese shop. It was in a like food court, and she just couldn't make it work. And she refused to look at the data and look at the numbers. And what she decided to do instead was to do a Kickstarter to crowdfund to open a restaurant, a wine and cheese restaurant, so that she would have a guaranteed place to move her product. Well, I don't know how many of you have ever owned a restaurant or seen their financials, but they are not usually wildly profitable businesses. Their margins are really tight, and she had to do a bunch of renovations on the space. And so she I think went about 3 years without taking a paycheck. She broke her hip because she was so stressed out. She just wasn't sleeping and fell down and broke her hip. And she was like trying to, start this new business to support the old business that wasn't working, but then the new business wasn't working, and she ended up shutting it down and having she's since recovered, and she's gone back to a job that pays her rather than a business because she felt like that was the best next step for her. But like, that was such an avoidable tragedy. And I really don't want to see anyone else do that. That's it. That's all I've got.
Awesome, Ian. Thank you so much. Hey, would you mind making me host again? And you can do that
Not
on the participant panel.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, that was, I just love the topics, and each one of those we could just do a whole class on. Super good stuff. I'm going to dig into that some more for sure.
Got it?
I do got it. Yeah, thank you. There's two of me, so
I just picked one.
Okay.
And let me do a stop. Oh, you can stop my screen, right?
I think the other me can.
I can. I believe I can.
Yeah,
too.
go for it.
Nope.
Okay, we got.
There we go.
Okay, fantastic. So, any questions that, Catherine, do you have a question? Just feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like. I know you wanted to talk about setting prices.
Yeah. I want to start my own e-commerce, and one of the problems would be pricing. How to decide the perfect price.
Yeah, the perfect price is about trial and error. So the short answer is, charge as much as you think you can, and no less than what will cause you to break even. So in order to know what your minimum price must be, you have to have a good handle on what are my expenses, like how much does it cost me to buy or produce or manufacture this product? Remembering things like packaging, shipping, freight in, shipping boxes, tissue paper, all of those things that come along with shipping a product. And so you need to have good margins there above your cost.
Yeah.
And then that margin has to cover everything else, including your fair market wage. So what a lot of people do, which sort of starts this downhill trend in a business, is they try to keep their price as low as possible.
Yeah.
And so what they say is, well, I can get by without getting paid. I'll wait until I make more money to get paid. But if your margins are tight, you're just going to grow the problem. You're never going to grow the profit.
Yeah.
So make sure that you are pricing it as high as you can. And it is then your responsibility to show the value of why it's worth the price.
Is there a general percentage you would recommend?
It totally varies by industry, by what the product is. Everybody's playing the same game. Everybody's trying to, sell high and buy low. So it depends on, if you have an exclusive product, that makes it very easy. I'm not an expert in e-commerce or retail. And I know there are a lot out there, so you may be able to find some of that information on Google or on blogs of those sorts of people. But sometimes it just starts with knowing what you want to take home and building from there. So if you know that you want to pay yourself $50,000 a year, then to say, okay, well, if that's going to be my pay, then based on the size of the business I think I'm going to run, my owner's pay, because if I'm doing all of the work, I need to have no more than 50% of that go to my owner's pay, because I also have to set aside money for taxes and for growth and for operating. So if I want to get paid 50,000, the business needs to be earning, clearing. So, the profit after the costs, 100,000.
Yeah, sure.
And so then, well, how many products do I think I can sell? What do they usually sell for? What do other things like this go for? Could I do a 5% increase, profit increase? Is it the kind of product that people are shopping around for? Like towels. You'll have people that want to buy a luxury towel. They want a giant bath sheet and they're willing to pay for it. Other people are like, I just need a couple of extra towels in case I don't get to laundry. And then they might only want to pay $10 for it. So you really about finding your audience, finding the people that you want to be selling to, because that will determine, do you have the right price and the right product to speak to those people?
Yeah. Another problem is that I'm a little worried about the tax. How do I know the tax, and I know that the kind of tax refund? Where could I find information about tax refund?
So anything that has to do with tax, you should talk to a tax accountant. So again, a lot of that's available online. You could call the California Department of Tax and Finance if they're even open. But you could look up sales tax very easily online, and anyone that is in your state is taxable based on the county that they live in, which can get a little overwhelming, which is why I love the e-commerce sites, because they figure all that stuff out for you. If you ship out of state, you are not necessarily required, but anytime it comes to something like that, like tax and compliance, I for sure would talk to a tax professional.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That's a wonderful session.
Well, thank you so much, Ian. Much appreciated. We're going to put this recording online. I'll be sure to let you know. And thank you for participating.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. Take care. Have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.